The great thing about pivot tables is it allows you to take a sea of data and create a very focused information report. I find that as soon as I'm able to produce this report, people start to see anomalies. They start to say, well, wait a second. We don't believe that Cool Jewelry Supply bought anything from the North region. Those records must be wrong. A great feature that we have in pivot tables is that if you question any number in the pivot table, you can very easily drill down to see the records behind that number. All you need to do is double-click the number. So someone's questioning the $30,695 in cell C9 for Cool Jewelry Supply in the North. I'll double-click that field. You'll notice that Excel has given me a brand new sheet. My data was originally on the pivot table sheet. My pivot table is on sheet 1. I now have a brand new sheet called sheet 2 that shows me the records that make up that number. This drill down capability works for any number in the pivot table. If I wanted to see all the records for a particular customer, I could click the total in column E. I now have a new sheet called sheet 3 that shows me all the records that make up that total. Now, if you discover something that's wrong, you don't want to fix it in sheet 2 or sheet 3. You want to go back to your original data set, the pivot table sheet, and fix the records there. One very important thing that you need to understand about pivot tables. Usually in Excel, if we change any cell, all of the formulas and all of the calculations instantly update. But the reason that pivot tables are so fast is that in our first step of creating a pivot table, Microsoft actually takes all the data on our worksheet and loads it into a special area in memory called a pivot cache. When you change data on the worksheet, it's not changing data in the pivot cache. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to randomly select a cell here and add $1 million to the cell. I can hear all the auditors out there just cringing. Relax. If I go to sheet 1, even though I've changed the original underlying data, my pivot table has not recalculated. Let me scroll down so we can see the total. We're still at 13.2 million. In order to refresh this data, I have to go to the Options tab and then click the large refresh button. If you were using pivot tables in the old version of Excel, the refresh button was a red exclamation point, which made no sense at all. I really appreciate that they've made it look like the refresh button in Internet Explorer. Kind of helps me understand that I need to refresh this table. When I click refresh, Excel goes back to the pivot table worksheet, reloads all of that data in the cache, and regenerates the pivot table. There, the 13.2 million just changed to 14.2 million. We now have the latest and greatest data.